Hello and welcome to the Zwift Race Place. Today we are going to be covering the TFC Mad Monday Race on the Gotham Grind Reverse Course. I will be walking you through the entire race today in all categories, but first we're going to do a little bit of pre-show kind of stuff, go over the course, and look at some of the overall standings from past weeks. Okay, so first up, a quick look at the course. If we head on over to the Velo Viewer here, you can see we start on a bit of an uphill. It is shown as a downhill on this, as this is the Gotham Grind Velo Viewer, but it is in fact a slight climb on the start. It is considered a rolling course by TFC. TFC classifies this as one of their rolling stages of the TFC Mad Monday series. It is a 4-lap race, so we're going around this little, almost looks like an 8 circuit 4 times, and you can see that little inlaid image there is the finish. So that little image to the left of the elevation key shows it is a bit of an uphill finish. It is the blue section of that elevation profile where the riders will be finishing. So they start at the bottom there and finish right at the top. Flattens off just a little bit before the finish, but it's definitely a bit of an uphill run into the finish. So it is a course for the sprinters, but one of those more diverse sprinters could definitely benefit from this course in this slightly uphill finish. If you're thinking like Grand Tour, more of a Peter Sagan type of finisher than, say, a rider with pure power like Elia Viviani. Now, if we look over to some of our results from last week in the TFC Mad Monday series in the EU/UK, we have leading the overall standings the Swedish Zwifters, followed by BRT, TFC, Zwift Scotland, and ART, your top 5. Cryogen in 6th, another notable team on those results as well. And over to the right, you can see some of our other category results broken down individually by category. So in those results, looks like Swedish Zwifters are leading the A race, followed by Cryogen and then BRT. In our B series, Swedish Zwifters leading once again. Swedish Zwifters clearly the strongest team racing on the circuit in this TFC Mad Monday series. We'll just have to see if anybody can dethrone them this week. Then in the C race, TFC leading that one. So Swedish Zwifters not making as much of a presence in some of the lower categories, but TFC leading the C series, followed by Glory and BRT. In the D series, Rhino, my own team, leading that series, followed by TFC and ART. And then finally, in the women's race, we have Zwift Scotland with the most points, followed by BRT and then ART. Last week, we saw Lizzie Duncombe make an appearance in the women's race in this TFC Mad Monday series. Just checking, does not look like Lizzie Duncombe is signed up for this week's race, though. But great performance from her last week. Of course, one of our pro Zwift women. Now, our A category men are just about 3 minutes out from the start, just under 3 minutes now. Just going to take this opportunity to tell you about some of the new upcoming things on Zwift that you don't want to miss. First up, Veganuary. We will be covering this live here on the Zwift Race Place. Starts on January 2nd, 5-stage race. Steering enabled, but you don't have to race with steering if you don't want to. And then 5 racing competitions, as you can see. Individual GC, Team GC, Sprint competition, Polka Dot Jersey, King Queen of the Mountain, and Women's Individual GC every Saturday in January at 16:30 GMT. That is, of course, starting in 4 days now. So if you're interested in signing up for that, just click down on the links below in the description. And then also our coaching tips series. Our next coaching tip video will be coming out tomorrow morning Eastern Standard Time with Leonard Tugels one of the racers in the race, in the A race today. Watch for him. He'll be wearing those Belgian bands that he earned in the Zwift Nations Challenge. So Leonard Tugels, the Belgian rider, with our coaching tip for this week. Took a break last week with the holidays, but of course before that we had Adam Dawson and Chris Ovenden giving us some great coaching tips. Now we are pretty close to the start of this race, so it is time to head over and watch the warm-ups of some of the riders as we now come within 2 minutes to start. You can see here the clock is ticking down, just about 1 minute to go, and we are watching Leonard Tugels, that rider I just told you about wearing the Belgian bands. He's warming up right around 200 watts, so a good warm-up there, but his heart rate still down at 108 beats per minute, so he has not ramped up quite yet, still sitting at a nice comfortable pace. More activity in the chat than a lot of the time. Usually these racers pretty quiet as we approach the start. Last week we had a big name, Chris McGlinchey, racing in this series here in the A race. He won the A race last week. In fact, great performance from him. He and Leonard Tugels went solo, tried to go to the finish solo, a long way out over the Turton's Grove KOM, which was our course last week, Sand and Sequoias, and they survived almost all the way to the finish, got caught by the pack at the end, but Chris McGlinchey was able to win in that bunch sprint. If I check back on the results from that week, we see Leonard Tugels took third. That's the rider we're watching right now as our riders are now underway. We're watching Leonard Tugels, the rider in the Belgian bands, but you can see a lot of TFC riders up here in this front group as well. Great to see all those TFC riders as they do sponsor this race. Today's course has 3 intermediates, one at each sprint point, and then of course the final lap they finish at just after the sprint point. Just before the sprint point. So that lap points are not available at the sprint point, but the first 3 laps will see a great battle between riders trying to win that intermediate sprint, get some points for their teams. And of course, TFC just rolled out with some new rules last week, which basically state that they have the power to upgrade riders if they feel like they have been performing substantially over. Well, basically what they have said is that if they see that you've been winning a substantial amount of races, say you've won 5-10 races in your category, then they reserve the right to upgrade you because they feel if you've been winning that much, it's time for you to move up. This has been a bit of a controversial subject if you look over on TFC's Facebook page. Some people strongly disagreeing, while others are psyched that somebody's finally doing something about the sandbagging that is so prevalent on Zwift. Let me know what you think in the live chat or down in the comments below about this new rule from TFC. We're now watching T. Elskins of the SPSD team. Sitting right around the top 10 spot here. If you want to learn the prime placing in a category field, head on over to our video from Adam Dawson. He explains this really well, his tips and tricks for finding the perfect place in a field. And right now, this top 20 spot is pretty perfect if you apply that tip. Alright, our B racers have just about gone off now, I believe, as well as our C racers. B racers heading off 1 minute after our A race, and C race 2 minutes after. At the 3 minute mark, we will see the depart of the D race, as well as the women's race. Those 2 races going off together, and that can occasionally be a little confusing, as sometimes the front packs of those 2 races end up getting stuck together. And it can be interesting to see, although those racers aren't technically racing against each other for points always, it can be interesting to see our D racers sprinting against our women's category. And last week it did in fact come down to a sprint for the fastest Zwift power rider between some of our women and our D racers in those two categories. Those front groups were rolling together. Now, Jay Simon of the SPSD team, we're watching him sitting right around top 60, top 70 spot. This is a large field, as you can see. We'll head to the overhead view here real quick. And definitely a substantial amount of riders, well over 100, I'd say, probably around 110, 115 riders in this front pack. If we head on over to Zwift Power signups for this race, which I'm going to do right now, definitely a lot of Zwift Power signups. So I would expect this large field to stick in our A race today, as that just seems to be kind of the trend in the A race. We've seen in weeks past, this large field that starts out in the A race often stays together. So just interesting there. Now our D and E races have gone off, so it's just about time to head back with some of our other categories now. Leave you with a shot of M. Wales, and I believe on his wheel, sorry about that, Gardner, one of the Saurus in the Pros Closet riders. See a couple of those Saurus in the Pros Closet jerseys down there, so definitely be interesting to see if they can pull off any team tactics in this race. Now our A racers are still a ways out from the sprint point, so we're going to head back with our B category, because they are the next category on the road. They just started not that long ago, about 4 minutes ago. So we'll see how they are doing as their race is now underway. Sorry about that, just having a hard time finding our B race out on course, but we will be with them shortly. Managed to catch up here with Hugo Huzzen of the ZWD squad, and he is in our front B pack on the road right now. Ajima also up here as well. We've seen him do some pretty amazing things in races past. T. Stein, Estemeyer, these are some of the top names in your B category today. Although the favorite, not any of these riders, but rather Mike Abrahams, he won the first race in London, I believe, and looking back to our results from last week in the B race, it was Thies Diepenmaat that took the win for the BRT squad, followed by Hens Letgers and Chris Schmidt. So I don't believe that Mike was racing last week, having a hard time finding him on the results. But he was signed up this week, so we'll be watching over in the leaderboard to the right-hand side of the screen to see if he showed up on the start line today. And he was the number one favorite coming into this race. So we'll just have to see what he does on the day. Seen him go for some great intermediate sprints in the past as well. He took, might have even been all of the intermediates in London, our first race of the series. Maybe not all of them, but he was definitely up there in all of those sprints. So really impressive racer, and he's got a strong sprint. So I would be watching for him today if we can find him in the results. Chisholm McDonald, also always a strong B rider. And the Swedish Swifters with a large presence in this B race. You can see all those blue, yellow, and white jerseys of the Swedish Swifters dotting your screen, as well as a couple of TFC riders thrown in there as well. Now, I believe that our A racers are going to be approaching the sprint point pretty soon, so we'll see if we can catch them before the sprint point. Now, here we are. Our A racers have already gone through the sprint point, it looks like. So we will be heading back with the C race to see what they are up to. But just stopping in with our A race real quick, looking at Leonard Tugels there and his coaching tips video on how to win in a sprint race when you are not a sprinter coming out tomorrow morning. So definitely watch for that from the Zwift Race Place. Still a large pack here. Looks like a breakaway has gone off the front of our A race. We'll check back in with them after we take a quick look at our C racers on the road. Just looking for our C racers out there. And here, sorry about that, just taking a quick stop back at the start pens, and now here we are with Aaron Spivak of the Cryogen squad. In this front C group, looks like we have a breakaway off the front. This is Mana Pistachio. Don't see him registered on Zwift Power, so definitely a curious rider here, and I'd say that Mana Pistachio maybe sandbagging, or maybe, not sure, maybe just not registered on Zwift Power. Either way, only about a second to the pack. These racers heading towards the sprint point now. Stay with our C race all the way until that sprint point. Now looking, Mana Pistachio, his gap growing just a little bit, as these riders are approaching that sprint point, I believe. Just a little confused on my course situation here. Think I might have been wrong about that. If we head back in with the main group, see Pete Sudworth of the TFC squad leading out the chase here, back behind. Just taking a look at him riding here. He is, of course, a TFC rider, and I always like to take a look at the bike choice for some of our lower categories, because a lot of the time they are lower level Zwifters. But here we see a lot of Tron bikes, so that's, of course, a solid choice on any flat course. Saw our Bob Jr., the TFC rider, just head on through there for a minute. Here we can go in with him right now. One of our junior racers out here in the TFC Mad Monday race. Love to see him doing well in this race. And our C race powering on towards the sprint point and the end of lap 1. Just having a bit of trouble with the Zwift companion app, but that is seeming to sort itself out. So stay with our C racers here, and the sprint point is coming up. It's slightly uphill into the sprint point, I believe. So it should be an interesting sprint. Sorry, slightly downhill, but a slight rise before the sprint point. A little bit of a rolling deal there, and riders, of course, wanting to try and get away on that slight rise before the sprint point. I've raced on this course myself, and racers always pushing super hard on that little kicker. It's similar to the leg snapper in Innsbruck, but about a tenth of the length, I'd say. Kind of a similar situation there, but not quite as much of a rise in the road. We're going to catch our C race sprint point, though, and then we will head back with our women's race to see what they are up to. And Mana Pistachio still leading them out. He's not registered on Zwift Power and will not be able to take any points on the day for his team, assuming that he's racing for one. But now riders blowing past. Looks like A Spivak, the Cryogen rider, taking first, followed by P Mars and then P Sudworth for TFC. Those were your top 3 through that sprint banner. Once again, Spivak taking home the points for Cryogen. And just looking over to our current series standings right now, looks like Cryogen up there in number 6 spot overall, and in the C Race Cryogen is not on the leaderboard, so we'll see if that sprint win from Aaron Spivak in the C Race helped out Cryogen at all in the standings there. Head back with our women's race now. See if we can take a look at that real quick. Now, here we are with Maria Oceanson, and if you know how to pronounce that, just feel free to correct me in the chat, because I'm sure that I'm butchering that name. No offense. I'm doing the best I can, but here we are at the front of our women's race with C. Griffith, A. Simmons. These are two of the ladies leading into the sprint point, and here we are, A. Simmons off the front. This is the intermediate point, and these are your women being led out. Let's see, Ellie Spink of the BRT squad currently sitting in first. Will Spink is overtaken on the line by the Zwift Scotland rider. It looked like this was H. Shanks in first for Zwift Scotland, and I think that Ellie Spink just managed to pull out second on the line in the intermediate for your women. Ellie Spink, a great rider. She got beat out by some of our more elite riders last week. We saw Lizzie Duncombe deciding to race in the TFC Mad Monday series. So Duncombe having a great race last week, but Ellie Spink is back for BRT this week, taking second in that sprint point, and now off the front of the race, driving hard, Kath Tompkinson is chasing. Kath Tompkinson of the art team, the other real front runner in this women's race here. This is always an exciting battle, in my opinion, more exciting than the men a lot of the time. Our A race just stays in one big clump, whereas our women's race, a little bit smaller and way more attacks and excitement. So we'll be checking back with these women later on for their second sprint point. But for now, we're going to head back with the Cat A men, hopping back into the front group with Leonard Tugels. Leonard Tugels of the TIS team, talked about him a little bit earlier. He does race for an IRL road team, so he has that real life experience, and now he has switched over to Zwift, and he's had some great performances so far, going in a breakaway in last week's TFC Mad Monday race on the Sand and Sequoias course. He's sitting towards the back of this group, but now if we head towards the front, M. Wales of the Cryo RDT team leading out the pack here, followed by our Arts of the World Elite Zwifters, our Abrantes up here as well. These are not the usual front runners that you'd expect to see at the front. Looks like the pace is still maybe a little bit more relaxed. These riders have already gone through their first sprint point of the course, and now a ways past it, so the pace slowing down a little bit, I believe. Some other riders' favorites that were registered today, head on over to the Zwift Power signups real quick just to look at that. Some other favorites registered today: Inga Reichart from the Kirschmere e-cycling team, Leonard Tugels, as I said, Eddie Houle from the Cryo RDT team, same team as this man, M. Wales here, teammate of Eddie Houle, we've seen some good performances from Eddie Houle in the past. Hywell Davies is up there as well. A couple Americans, Matt Gardner from the Saris and the Pros Closet squad. We saw him at the front of this A race earlier. And Scott Gleason of the No Pins R3R team also registered for this race. Just to name a few names out of your top 10 favorites coming into this race. And we just saw the No Pins R3R jersey of Scott Gleason just a few moments ago. Now, M. Wales of the Cryo RDT team, not sure if he's looking for a long one here, but M. Wales going off the front. I believe these riders are descending towards the sprint point on course. Looking at the live data here. Except they're taking a left here. believe this takes them away from the sprint point, back towards the start-finish banner, and then they head over back around through New York in that kind of 8 shape, back towards the sprint point. Again, Luke Chabot going off the front just a little bit here, stopping in with El Weichart of the Cryo RDT team, another Cryo RDT teammate. But here we are at the front with Luke Chabot of the Relentless squad, and he is off the front of this race, got about 4 seconds now to the rest of the racers. T. Elskins, M. Sjorgen of the Swedish Zwifters squad trying to chase him down. Swedish Zwifters have a lot to lose here in that front spot. They're holding steady with a good amount of points, though. Just looking over at the results, it looks like the Swedish Zwifters have well over 1,600 points. Looks like they're at 1,696, followed by BRT with 1,608. So quite a gap there. But Swedish Zwifters still trying a move here. Not trying a move, but still trying to chase down this move here. They do not want to lose any points. C. Ernst of the World Elite Zwifters also chasing from behind, but Luke Chabot of the Relentless squad holding about 3 seconds as these racers heading back towards the sprint point for round 2, lap 2. Now, just looking back over at our live chat, Jacek Karluk, he provided this a while ago, and I apologize for not saying this sooner, but he won the London race in the B Cat, not Mike Abraham, so sorry about that. I apologize for that mix-up. He says he is racing in the A category now, so keep an eye out for Jacek Karluk in this A category race. Now, Luke Chabot of the Relentless squad has been caught before the sprint point, so it's back to the front of our A race now to see who is making the next move. Heading towards the front here, sitting in 8th place, 4th, and M. Wales of the Cryo RDT team, leading them out, followed by RR's World Elite Zwifters, chasing about a second behind, but he has got a substantial gap here if we look at the pack behind, and he has got this on the line, I believe. M. Wales of the Cryo RDT team with a nice sprint there. M. Lindvist taking second. Swedish Zwifter M. Lindqvist. So some more points for the Swedish Zwifters here with that nice second place in the intermediate. And heading back to our B race now to see if we can catch up with them before the sprint point. Sorry about that, just taking a little longer than intended to get back with our B race. Now here we are in the B race with Bram Geilenkirchen, and once again going to apologize for the pronunciation of that name because I'm sure I'm not saying it right. But Bram Geilenkirchen sitting around the top 50 spot here in our B race. And if we head farther up towards the front, just to see who's sitting up there, saw some Swedish Zwifters in this B race. They have a little bit of ground to make up. Sorry, not the Swedish Zwifters. They do not have a little bit of ground to make up. They are leading this B race as well as the overall standings. And now the Swedish Zwifters coming to the front. M. Oman C. Soboleski, the Polish rider. These riders leading out into the sprint point. If you check the minimap in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, you can see that little green circle is the location of the sprint point. And all these riders still coming to the front are Gubby for the TFC squad. Just trying to stay with our front rider here. Jay Fusswell from the SDW Hornets in the front here as well. But now some sprints are being launched. Flavian Ocogne, not sure which team he's racing for, but he is launching his sprint from the wheel of P. Ballant, leading them out, but it's Jay Linden sitting in first overall here. believe Lyndon has it. No! It was not Lyndon. Mike Abraham, the rider I was talking about earlier from the Bike and Scroll team, he took it on the line. Mike Abraham first through the sprint point, and Lyndon of the Swedish Swifters squad second. So Swedish Swifters just working on their lead here, and they're definitely going to keep it. T.S. Deppenmont up there as well. He was the winner of last week's race on the Sand and Sequoias route. Now heading over to our C race just to see what's happening there. Here we go with Raul Reisman heading towards the sprint point. Not too far out now. Pretty close here for Raul Reisman. And this rider is Zwift Power Category A. Qualified as a Zwift Power Category A anyway, according to Zwift Power. Aaron Spivak is also up here towards the front of our C race. I'm just going to be ignoring Mena Pistachio from now on. Pistachio from now on, as he has been holding well over 5 watts per kilograms for a long time now, well outside C category limits, not to mention not registered on Zwift Power, so does not matter anyway, will not make a difference in the final results. Raul Reisman, however, he is an A racer, but TFC has said that they will be applying their rule to riders who have been winning consistently in their category. So we'll see how those DQ rules apply to Raul Reisman. He is registered on Zwift Power and could still be eligible for a result here. You just can't be sure. But it looks like he is going to be our first Zwift Power registered rider through the sprint point if he can hold this gap. 25 seconds back to P. Sudworth of the TFC squad. I don't know that gap can come down before the sprint point, and I'm going to say it definitely cannot, as we can now see the sprint banner right there. Raul Reisman is going to be your first Zwift Power registered C rider through the sprint point. And then we'll head back with our C pack behind, because there will definitely be a sprint from these guys back here to see who takes second in the Zwift Power rankings for this intermediate. P. Sudworth is the first to go, but he's being followed by some of these other riders. P. Mars, oh, sorry, I went too far. H. Mortensen, it looks like Mortensen has it here. W. Honey on the line, no. Cryogen rider, oh, that was tough. Believe H. Mortensen had it on the line, now sinking to the back in that green jersey. Maybe I was wrong about that result. So going for second place, just have to wait for the Zwift Power Preem tab to update on that, because to be honest, I kind of botched that. Not sure who took the win there. But if you want to check out the Zwift Power's live data for yourself, there is a link to that in the description as well as a link to Zwift Insider's description of this course if you're curious about that. So all that located in the description below, as well as the sign up for Veganuary coming up on January 2nd. Alright, now we're going to head back with some of our D racers. This is Ollie Fusswell, and if I could show you his profile picture right now, I would. This is a private user, as he is a kid racing on Zwift. Here you can see his team, SWD Youth, and this kid does not look to be any older than 9, maybe 10 years old, and he is crushing it in our D category race right now, up here towards the front of the pack. But Jimbo of the TFC squad is our number 1 Zwift Power registered rider in the D race right now. although he is only being shown as 15th overall on the leaderboard. But before missed that, almost missed our women's intermediate here. Ellie Spink, she has led in this race before, and I believe that she just took it on the line, but that was a very close sprint. A. Simmons of the WMCC team also up there as well. See, I believe that's Kath Tompkinson from the R Electrons team. She was right up there in the front group as well. So once again, just have to wait for the Zwift Power Preems tab to update. But now back with our D race. And here we are with Jimbo Imbo of the TFC squad heading towards the sprint point, and I believe that he will take max points out of all of our Zwift Power registered D racers today, because he is the only other D racers I see are not registered on Zwift Power. So Jay Imbo from the TFC squad able to just sit in, and I think that he knows it, not putting up too big of a sprint here, not even trying to get around Jay Vivard, the other D racer in this category, because Vivard not registered on Zwift Power, so he will not count in those final results. Nice to see a TFC racer doing so well in these races. Of course, they sponsor the race, so okay, Julian Vandebrand says, can you please show the A group? I want to see Leonard Tugels. So Julian Vandebrand, I think that I can do that, as we've seen all categories go through the sprint point now. Just got to pull him up here. And now, watching Leonard Tugels in the front category, in the front group of our A race, number 1 category today. And this group has come down in size pretty substantially. These racers just getting ready to head through the sprint point for the 3rd time. And after that, it is all the way to the finish for our A racers. So just going to head farther up through this group. I know Julian wanted to see Leonard Tugels there, and there he is in the Belgian bands in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Definitely still doing well in this A race. K Yip also up here as well. I believe that is, just checking back real quick just to double check myself. But Chris Yip, the Canadian, took 2nd place in last week's TFC Mad Monday Series race. But our A racers getting very close to the sprint point now, so heading towards the front of the A race here. Whoops, I believe I went too far. Alright, give me a second. I will be back with the correct A racers in 1 moment. Here we are with Leonard Tugels. Now moving to the front. There you go, Julian. He is just at the front coming into the sprint point. But M. Gamst of the KST team leading them out into the sprint. M. Wales, the cryo rider. Oh, and it's a move by the Swedish Zwifters at the end. That Swedish Zwifter M. Lindqvist taking the sprint point once again. We saw him leading out in last time's sprint point, and once again going for the win, just opening up the gap for the Swedish Zwifters in all of these standings, the A race standings as well as the overall standings, because points count towards all of that here. And the Swedish Zwifters dominating in this TFC Mad Monday series pretty much all around here. See that No Pins R3R jersey? I believe that is Scott Gleason in our front group here. Sorry, that is G. Crinjo. I was incorrect. But one of Scott Gleason's teammates in this front group here. And also seeing a nice amount of Saurus and the Pros Closet riders here. 2 or 3 stars in the pros closet jerseys. And that, of course, is the team of Matt Gardner, one of the top racers racing in the A race today. Now, it is not too far until our A racers head on through the finish line. So we will be sticking with them until that finish, I believe. And then it is back to our B race to watch their finish. Then C race for their finish, D race, and so on. Now, this is the first time that we're actually getting to see these riders coming through the finish banner. We haven't seen this quite yet. This is, of course, your finish. So you saw there, it's a little kick up, 5% gradient before the banner there, and it stays at around 4% all the way until the banner. So this finish, it's a flat course, but the finish benefits a rider who can climb as well as can dominate in that 15-second power and 1-minute power if they can go from long enough. Now we see Luke Chabot sitting in this front group still. He is the relentless rider that went on the attack earlier. It was a big attack from him, got around 5 seconds, but was brought back even before the sprint point. So not taking any points for that attack. Sometimes I wish that we had a Most Aggressive Rider award in certain Zwift races, because a lot of the time in the men's category, like you're seeing right now, it's just a big bunch and nobody's interested in going for a break. Whereas if you're watching, say, real life road racing, take the Tour de France, for example, a big real life stage race, they have breakaways going pretty much every day in the flats. And this is definitely a flat race, rolling race, perfect for a breakaway. And the way that Zwift is set up, we just don't see a lot of breakaways. And a Most Aggressive Rider award could maybe spark some motivation to attack. Now, this is still your front A group, and I think we're going to stick with them until the finish. Let's see, they are predicted to come in around 9 minutes, so maybe we'll see if we can catch our women's intermediate point one last time before the finish of our A race. But we will definitely be back with them before the finish, so checking in on our women's race real quick here with Ellie Spink of the BRT team, and she is leading out our women's category currently. A couple of minutes, we'll head back on over to our men's race, but for now, just taking a look at the women's race. Maria Ossiansen of the Swedish Swifters squad. Sorry about that once again, pronunciation of the names. Still up here for the Swedish Swifters. Gonna take some points for them in this category. If we look back at the results, Swedish Swifters currently sit in 4th overall in the women's race, and they did not take any points in the women's race last week, so they're gonna try and make up some of that deficit. It's about 200 point deficit, little less, to the number 3 team. So Swedish Swifters making an effort to get on the podium in the women's race here. Now our women's category getting a little bit spread out. Ellie Spink moving to the back as looks like Maria Ossiansen, the rider I was just talking about, moving to the front, the Swedish Swifter, but she's followed by A. Simmons, now A. Simmons of the WMCC team coming around her. And we see multiple BRT riders in this front group, as well as some Zwift Scotland riders up here as well. So all of these teams represented in the women's race. and all of these riders doing a great job. It's not quite as large as a field as pretty much any of our other categories. Definitely not the A race. A lot more riders in the A race there, but it would be great to see some new women showing up and racing in the TFC Mad Monday race in the women's category in the future. Give these women some more competition. Alright, now it is time to head back with the A race because their finish is coming up shortly. And here we are with Leonard Tugels right at the front of your A race. We see, looks like a brake might have gone off the front here. Just keeping my eye out for that. Leonard Tugels sitting on the front here. M. Gamst currently sitting in first. The KST rider has about a second to the rest of the pack, with Leonard Tugels chasing hard along with BFit, Patra, Arbrantes, some other notable names back there. I just have to check and see how far we are out from the finish, but I believe around 4 minutes to the finish of this A race. Just checking on that now. Gamst of the KST team now being swept back up into the group. We see L. Bard of the No Pins R3R team in this group as well, and the group has gotten smaller with more and more riders dropping off of the back of our A race as we come down in towards the finish. Now, we will be finishing right around 22.9, 23 miles, so just about 2 miles, 2.5 miles left to go before our finish. Moving farther towards the front. See, Luc Chabot, the relentless rider, made an attack earlier, still in this group. And some of the numbers are quite high here. Watts per kilograms exceeding 8 watts per kilos. Riders are pushing pretty hard to stay on this group, especially at the back. Whoops, sorry about that. Alright, I will just went a little too far in your A race. I'll be rejoining those riders in just a minute. Here we are. Back with the A race, and it is still a fierce battle. E. Harris in here as well, always a contender in our A races. As the riders just over the 21 mile mark, approaching 21 and a half miles here, and we are getting pretty close to the finish in our A race. Try and position ourselves at the front of this group. A hard time at staying in the front, to be honest. Leonard Tugels in the Belgian stripes, though, sitting right at the front here, watching him from the front. See some Saros in the Pros Closet Riders, Swedish Swifter riders moving up here. Those are two strong teams coming into the finish today. And they're coming up over this little rise on into the finish. Tugels, a lighter rider, moving towards the front, as well as Reichert, the Cryogen rider. Once again, the Swedish Swifters always there, sitting right on the left side of your screen. Now, they've faded back just a little bit, but they're still at the front of this race. Now moving up on the right-hand side, you can see some of those Swedish Swifter jerseys. A No Pins R3R jersey up here as well. As we're coming in towards the finish, 21.9 miles, about 1 mile to go now. It's a rolling section through here. But these riders still managing to stay at the front. Always tough for lighter riders to maintain their front positions in a race through the rollers. You can see Leonard Tugels, who is a lighter rider, at the front on the inclines and then flies right out the back of the group on the short descents. So we'll see how many of our lighter riders can stay in the front, because it will be those riders who are really contesting the win in the finale, those riders with the strong 15-second power, but also lighter riders who can punch a little bit of a sprint on an incline. The riders now just about a half a mile out. We are under the 1K to go banner, if there was one, and we'll pass through the sprint point one more time before heading on into the finish. Once again, going over our favorites real quick before we come into the finish in our A race. Just taking a quick look at that now. Ingo Reichart, haven't seen him quite yet at the front here. Leonard Tugels, Eddie Houle, Greg Gosicki, Zach Nair, Matt Gardner, the Saracen, the Pros Closet Rider, Hywell Davies, Chris Yip, Roy Arts, and Scott Gleason of the No Pins R3R squad. Those are the riders contesting for the win here. Now, these riders all sprinting for this intermediate point. Some big numbers, but this is not worth any intermediate points. Here at the front, this is our last lap, so no intermediate points available. Ara Brontes up here as well. It's Leonard Tugels moving towards the front of the race here. Gamst, the KST rider, also up here as well. We are now at 23 miles and not quite at the finish, so my calculations were a little off there. But the finish coming very shortly, and these riders will be taking this right-hander, and it is just about into the finishing straight here, not very far. See a small group of A racers ahead, and I do not believe that those are, they're going to be caught before the finish, I believe. They're getting lapped here, I believe. Leonard Tugels, one of these riders coming through this lapped group, moving through them quite swiftly, and now riders launching their sprints. It's G. Grasicki of the Rule 5 squad on the front. Eddie Houle was up there as well. G. Gringo of the No Pins R3R squad also up here. We see Gringo following Houle, and they're into this little incline. Now it's G. Gringo, the No Pins R3R rider. Gringo at the front, being overtaken by Eddie Houle, the Cryo RDT rider. Looks like Eddie Houle will have the win. R Arts following from the World Elite Zwifter squad, and then I Reichart from the KCA1 squad. Leonard Tugels, the rider I was talking about earlier, I believe he was able to take a top 10 squat. Lindqvist, the Swedish Zwifter, also having a good performance in some of those intermediates, was also up there, top 10, top 15 spot. Eddie Houle just coming to a stop here. And we head back with our B race now. Got to catch up with them fast before their sprint. Make sure that we get in the right riders here. Here we are with Achim Ott in the front of our D race, sitting around the 10th spot. Ties Diepenma also up here as well, and these racers still a little ways out from the finish, but it's coming up fast. Whoops, sorry about that. I think I went into a group somewhere else on the road. We'll be back with our front B group in just a minute. Yeah, here we are, back with Achim Ott, the Swiss rider, up here in this front B pack. Matt Looker says, go No Pins R3R, and No Pins R3R with a great performance today. Eddie Houle of the Cryo RDT team was the one that pulled out the win, but No Pins R3R also up there as well. It was over in the live chat. Achim Ott still at the front here. Well, he wasn't at the front when we joined him, but he's up to the front here, coming towards this sprint banner. No points available for this fourth lap, I believe. Too close to the finish. And that was just a decision that TFC made, and one that, honestly, I think I agree with. Just passing over that green dashed line on the road, indicating the start of the sprint. But these racers, well, they might be sprinting, but this is not worth any points here coming through this sprint banner. Now it's a little incline and then a bit of a rolling section before the finish. These racers now approaching 23 miles down and just about 46 minutes into this race. It's like all of our categories will be finishing a little ahead of where I expected to be perfectly honest. See if we can move up through the B race just a little bit here. Here we are with Mike Abraham of the Bike and Scroll team. This is one of the riders to watch coming into that final sprint point. Haven't seen him perform on a slight incline really yet, but I know he packs a solid sprint, so we'll see what he can do coming into the finish. Also, some Swedish Zwifters up here as well. A strong team, always one to watch out for coming into the finish of any race. And our front B pack taking the left-hand turn here. Another group of B riders taking a right-hand turn. Glad that we weren't lapping riders right into the finish here, because that could have gotten a little confusing. G. Womack now launching his sprint. M. Templeton. Womack farther towards the front here. And the line is just ahead. Who has it? Sorry. Looks like A. And just too far back to catch the sprint in our B race, and I apologize for that, but we'll get confirmed results on Zwift Power shortly. Really sorry about that. Just missed the finish to our B race there a little bit. But we will be going back with our C race now, because we don't want to miss their finish. And Raul Reisman, the rider, sandbagging a little bit, I'd say, listed as an A category rider on Zwift Power. But here we go, I believe this is, Raul Reisman back with him, our leading Zwift Power rider on the road, as the C rider in front of him, Minute Pistachio, is not registered on Zwift Power and not eligible for points. And Reisman still a ways out from the finish here. He is not quite up to the sprint point yet, but he's got just about, times are differing to the group behind, but I'm going to say, I don't know, it says 1 minute for some riders, 45 seconds for others. So about a minute to the group behind. So I'd say Reisman has this one locked up in terms of Zwift Power standings. And I'll be watching for our B race confirmed results. And here we are. Those are just in. Hens Lecters took first. He was 83rd overall after our A racers came through, but first in the B race for the Zwaluwen team. They are not very high up on the results, so that shouldn't be much of a shake-up there. Followed by Jeff Morton for the WMZ team. Once again, not a team really contending for the win. Michael Templeton from the Dirt Squad, Mike Abraham from the Bike and Scroll team, and Jonas Funk from the DZR team. Transans Martisen from the Viking Squad, one of the first B racers from a team that has a shot at top 10, top 20 in the overall results. And then Alin Mirhe was our first Swedish Swifter, taking home those points for the Swedish Swifters, as well as Eric Hellstrom, another Swedish Swifter in the top results there. Per Krogstad, a third Swedish Swifter, Jesper Linden. So all these Swedish Swifters, that is the key to leading in this TFC Mad Monday Race series, is consistency, and can see that from the results currently. I mean, it's not like these Swedish Swifters are always winning the races. They're just always up there in the front group. Consistency is key, and the more riders you have, the more points you're taking home for your team. Now, as we come towards the later categories, just want to remind you all to let me know over in the live chat before you go what you think about TFC's new sandbagging rules. Because for those of you who didn't hear me talking about that earlier, just a quick recap. They've basically said if you're riding in a category where you've already won 5, 10 races, not even TFC races, but just races in general, they think it's time for you to upgrade and reserve the right to force you to upgrade, basically. You will be DQ'd. So just let me know over in the comments, down in the comments below, or over in the live chat if you're watching this live, what you think about that new rule. Reisman taking this left-hand turn, and that is the final turn before the finish, I believe. The final intersection before the finish. He is quite close to the finish now, coming up on 23 miles, and the line is now just in front of him on the mini-map, up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Reisman with a solid gap to the pack behind, and that gap is just growing. So now the banner is in sight, and Raul Reisman has locked it up. He is, of course, technically registered as an A racer on Zwift Power, so we'll see what TFC has to say about that, if he's DQ'd or not. But for now, Raul Reisman is the winner on the day in your C race. Alright, it is now time to head back with the women's race and the D race. Just have to see which one is farther ahead on course. And it looks like it's our leading women who are ahead of the D racers, so we'll head back with them right now. And here we are with Ellie Spink of the BRT squad. I see A. Simmons, the WMCC rider, up here as well. Shanks, the Zwift Scotland rider, another fast female rider in this front group here as well. You can see Ellie Spink wearing those polka dot gloves earned from riding Alpe du Zwift. And just checking over in the results, and it looks like Kath Tompkinson, one of the prominent riders previously in our front group and in the women's race, she is quite a fast rider, has been dropped about 24 seconds behind, along with Maria Ossiansen and Di Barretto. Kath Tompkinson and Maria Ossiansen, those are the two big names that have been dropped from your women's race here. And you can see some other D racers sprinkled throughout the leaderboard here. Most of those not registered on Zwift Power. Our leading Zwift Power registered, D racer is currently behind the lead of our women's race here. And our women just about to, well, not just about to, but pretty close to the sprint point now. Not too far. Sprint point, of course, no points available this lap, as this lap is awfully close to the finish when they come through the sprint point. Those two banners not too far apart. And now getting confirmation on our A race. Got that a little while ago, but looks a little bit more complete now. Eddie Houle is your now confirmed, Zwift Power confirmed winner of the A race, and our photo matched up with that as well. Followed by Roy Oates, the World Elite Zwifter, Ingo Reichart, Martin Lindquist, and Leonard Tugels in 5th. So that's your top 5. Matt Gardner took 6th from Saris in the Pros Closet, and GTR Gringo in 7th from No Pins R3R. Luke Chabot, the rider we saw go for an attack from the Restart team, he took 8th. Rui Miguel Abrantes, that we saw him quite a few times in our lead A pack, up there of the Tuga ZRT team in 9th, and then rounding out the top 10 was Rick Van Breda of the ABLOC team in 10th. Now it looks like a little bit of an attack from Simmons of the WMCC team in our women's race currently. She's now got about a second to Shanks and Spink. That gap is growing a little bit, but it looks like those riders behind are chasing her back down. H. Shanks closing the gap to Simmons. Not sure if Simmons went for that sprint point or not. No points available though, so if she did, not going to be able to take any points there. Now Simmons caught back by the group once again, and Kath Tompkinson still sitting around 25 seconds back. So both groups holding that gap pretty steady, but does not look like it will be closed before the finish. She's back there with Maria Ossiansen. So those two strong riders have been distanced from the front group with A. Simmons, Ellie Spink, and the Zwift Scotland rider H. Shanks. Head over to our Zwift Power live data real quick. It's Annie Simmons of the WMCC squad, just to clarify that, and Heather Shanks from Zwift Scotland. Now Simmons got another gap on those other riders, passing Harper, another female rider out here today. Harper, a lapped rider though, so will not matter as much. G. Hickman is a D racer chasing from behind, but he will also not matter as he's not in the same category. So it looks like A. Simmons from the WMCC squad has taken the win in your women's race. A great attack by her there, and Ellie Spink for second. Heather Shanks of the Zwift Scotland squad taking third. Your top three in the women's race, and I'd say I can pretty much confirm that now, although we will wait to see, or you can wait to see what Zwift Power says on the subject. Now heading back with Jimbo Imbo. From the TFC squad, and he has still not finished, but he is the number one ranked D rider on Zwift Power. So Jimbo Imbo, but I'm assuming he just wants to be called Jimbo by looking at his name here. The TFC rider going to be first through the sprint banner, although there are no points available this time through. And he is not that far from the finish now. Just over 22.5 miles into the race. 57 minutes down now. And it looks like the leaders of all our categories may finish within the 1 hour mark. Jay Imbo, or Jimbo, I'm assuming, is racing the clock now to finish within that 1 hour mark because he doesn't have much else of a race anywhere else, I don't believe. ACF and Nagelkere is chasing, but not registered on Zwift Power, so won't make much of a difference. Ollie Fusswell of the SDW youth team is in that second group on the road in our D race, our official Zwift Power second group on the road, so to speak. Now, Jimbo coming up on the finish line and putting in a nice sprint, even though he really doesn't have to. Jimbo got a nice gap here to the rest of the field registered on Zwift Power. He might not know who's registered on Zwift Power, though, so just safer to sprint always, of course. But Jimbo from the TFC squad with a powerful sprint there and heading through that banner in first place. Sorry, see if we can catch up with Ollie Fusswell before the finish of that next group on the road. Now, before you leave the stream, just want to make sure, hit that like button down below if you enjoyed the coverage, and make sure to subscribe to the Zwift Race Place for more coverage and commentary, as well as some of our coaching tips videos. We'll have a new one of those from Leonard Tugels coming out tomorrow morning, and we'll be with you every Monday for the rest of this TFC Mad Monday series. But for now, we will ride it out with Ollie Fusswell in the D race of the SDW Youth Squad, as well as a couple other D racers here. S. Herman also going for it. Not sure. Yes, this is Sinisa Herman, registered on Zwift Power, but it's Michael Alls sprinting from the Rhino squad. Ooh, looks like Herman has it on the line, followed by Michael Alls. Those two riders wearing the same jersey there, but it was definitely Sinisa Herman taking second in that bunch sprint behind followed by Michael Alls in third for the Rhino squad. And the Rhinos currently leading the D Series standings, so we'll see if they can hold on to that lead with that nice result from Michael Alls. Alright, that concludes our coverage of the TFC Mad Monday race. Make sure to register for Veganuary before it's too late. That is starting on January 2nd, presented by Team Vegan. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe to the Zwift Race Place. And don't forget to come back next week for more live coverage and commentary of the TFC Mad Monday series. Alright, we will see you then. Thank you for watching. Signing off for now.